Latin GCSE set text. This is Pliny, Pliny the Younger, and his letters to Trajan and Trajan's reply. Welcome to another Lockdown Learning with myself, Paul Holland. This particular session is concentrating on the GCSE set text for Latin, and it's the one of Pliny the Younger, Pliny the Younger's letters to Trajan, and Trajan, the emperor's replies back to him. So it's quite an interesting document in that sense, in that it shows the relationship between a political administrator, that's Pliny, and the actual emperor himself, who writes back. We've got his words back to Pliny in just a very short section of this set text. As I'm sure you know, the set text is quite short. It consists actually of just 3 letters. We'll look at them in 2 halves. The first half is Pliny's initial letter to Trajan, saying where he is, how the journey's been going, possibly to reinforce the fact that he's heading off into the east. It's quite a long and difficult journey, but also just to reassure his boss, if you like, that he's getting on with the job. And then we hear back from Trajan himself, a very short reply, but just one that confirms that he's happy with how it's all been going. And in the second half, this is the longer reply back to Trajan again from Pliny, who again talks about how his journey was difficult, how he got a little bit ill, how he ended up turning up late when he arrived at his particular province. But actually it was quite good because he ended up celebrating the emperor's birthday. So he turns it to an advantage. He puts a positive spin, we might say today, on his delays. But he does make it quite clear that it's not easy to travel in the Roman Empire compared with how we find it today. But it's actually worth mentioning that this is quite an important theme as well, that travelling any long distances in those days was actually quite arduous. As to why Pliny is heading out to Bithynia in the first place, this is because he has been appointed specifically by Trajan to take control of this particular province. It's out in the east. We'll look at it in a moment. And he needs to go and sort out the finances, the corruption, make sure that the taxes are being collected and that the province is being well run, basically. So that's the background. Now let's have a look at the specifics of this set text. So let's put this into some context. Here's a map of the Roman Empire, the whole Roman Empire stretching across the Mediterranean. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Here's the place that he's setting off from. Here's Rome. He'll be heading over to the east, the province of Bithynia. Bithynia and Pontus, it's called. He'll be passing underneath this cape of Malea. This is the one with dangerous currents. He makes a point of mentioning it to his boss, perhaps just to remind him that he's taken on this long, exciting journey, and he's rounded the Cape of Malea, and he'll be heading over here. Let's zoom in a little bit more closely on this map of the eastern Mediterranean, and here you can see his route. He makes his way all the way here to Ephesus. This is in the second half now of the set text, and decides to go across land to Pergamum, but clearly something stops him there. He's clearly had quite a bad journey. He mentions he's had a fever. He calls it a little fever. He plays it down a little bit, but he also does make it clear that he has arrived quite late in Bithynia because of the difficulties of travel. So here we have the first 2 letters from our set text, and as you can see from the titles, this one here is being written to the Emperor Trajan, so Traiano Imperatori is the dative, so Pliny writing to the Emperor Trajan, and the second one here, Trajan writing to Pliny, Plinio, and that again is the dative. Let's just have a look at what the content is of each letter. Here in Pliny's letter on the left, he is effectively writing to Trajan, keeping him informed. There's those words, nuntio tibi, I'm letting you know, because I think it's important for you. I think you are interested. Ad curam tuam pertinere. So he's keeping him informed of the nature of his journey, what kind of transport he's taking, and whereabouts he's got to. As we have already mentioned, it's just here that Pliny mentions the fact that he's gone underneath the Cape of Malea, Hypermalian. That's the Greek, by the way. He's an educated Roman, writing to another educated Roman. They used a lot of Greek in their speech, in their conversation. He's in Greek territory as well, so maybe that's why he's just thrown in that particular phrase there in Greek. There was apparently in those days a phrase to do with having passed the Cape of Malea, and that suggested that you'd come a long way, that you'd gone past some dangers. So actually, that's probably why he's popped that in there, as well as to make the point that he has certainly gone on a long journey for his emperor. And just here you can see he decides to make the description a little more vivid, a little bit more exciting. He uses destino in the present tense, and he prefaces it with the word nunc, now, at this moment, I am deciding to travel partly by boats, partly by overland vehicles. In English, we would translate destino as I have decided, but it is still in the Latin present tense, so it brings it much more alive. And he also now goes on to describe the different ways in which he's going to travel, as I say, by boat or by carriage. And he explains this in terms of the fact that sometimes the very hot weather, graves aestus, stops you from going overland, making a journey, itinerary, and sometimes the winds, the continual winds from the north, slow down your sailing, your navigazioni. Trajan's reply to Pliny suggests that he is very happy with his decisions. He's very supportive of Pliny. Two things suggest this in terms of the language. He begins the letter, it's the very first word, it's in an emphatic position, with recte, as you should. Well done, he says, this is correct. And he also uses later on the word prudenter. He says that you've wisely chosen, you've decided to do this very sensibly, well done. There's also a sense in which we can see how he reflects Pliny's language. It's a little bit like when we are talking with somebody whom we like or we wish to impress. We tend to mirror their body language, we tend to mirror their own words, their language, and the same thing has happened here. We find a few phrases that Pliny used have been reused by Trajan, just reflecting the way in which he agrees with Pliny about what he's done. Where Pliny uses nuntio tibi, this is reflected in renunciasti, you have reported back, you have announced back to me, well done. And he also uses the verb pertinet, it is important to me, and this reflects the one that Pliny uses here. We find that Pliny has used this dual phrase, partly by boat, partly by carriage, partim, partim, and this is echoed in Trajan's reply, interim nabibus, interim vehiculis. And I think these two letters also are really interesting for showing the relationship between these two men. Obviously, Pliny refers to him as domine, my master, my lord, that's in the vocative. He's obviously showing respect. He's showing respect as well in the whole content by saying, I think you should know what's happening. I'm keeping you informed. But look at Trajan's reply as well. Trajan refers to him as carissime, my dearest Pliny, my dearest Secundus, of course, is Pliny's name that he's using, my dearest Secundus. He's also supportive too. He uses words like prudenter, saying that you've chosen wisely, recte at the beginning, we've already mentioned as well, but also that phrase at the end, prout loca suaserint, depending on the particular location, depending on the situation. And now here we have the second part of the set text. I have decided to do this in two sections. Actually, this first part of Pliny's next letter back to Trajan is all about his journey. Let's just make sure that we understand exactly what happens. He starts with the good news, once again referring to my lord, Domine, and beginning with good words like saluberimam, telling us that he had a good sailing experience, navigationem, all the way to Ephesus. But then after I began to make the journey in vehicles, so postquam coepi, after I began to make the journey in vehicles, then suddenly he says I was vexatus, I was affected by, troubled by, first of all, gravissimis aestibus, by very hot temperatures, and then also etiam, by a little fever, a slight fever, febriculis. And for this reason, he chose to stop, subsisti, in Pergamum. So he starts with the positive news here, with the good journey, and finishes with the fact that various things have gone wrong, possibly just in order to keep the whole correspondence upbeat, if you like, so as not to give the impression of being negative, being too complaining. You will, in terms of the language, need to insert a sum here, in terms of the expertus sum, having experienced, I did experience a good journey by boat, and you would need to insert the same thing here as well, vexatus sum, I was affected, I was troubled. The bad news continues with the fact that when he did transfer into little coastal boats, cum transissem, when I transferred over, when I went across into little boats for the coast, naviculas, little boats, horarias means coastal, then I was detained by contrary winds. So he's having real trouble getting to Bithynia, and he says that he arrived later than I had hoped. That's the pluperfect tense, tardius quam speraveram. But then he changes everything to the positive. He then says that I cannot complain about this delay. There's the word for to complain. It's an infinitive. It doesn't look like one, and that's because it's a deponent verb, so it looks like a passive infinitive. Query about the delay. Why can't he complain about the delay? Because it was the same day as the emperor's birthday, Natalem tuum, your birthday. So I was able to celebrate your birthday when I was in the province. How does he emphasize this positive turn up for the books? Well, he uses a superlative here, auspicatissimum, which means most auspicious, really good fortune, good luck. And he uses the verb celebrare, a very positive verb to celebrate, at the end of the sentence. That's a very powerful position to put that word in. You might be asked what the date is, a little bit unfair if you were, but just have to learn it. It's the 17th of September. So that's 15 days inclusive at both ends before the calends, the first day of October. So if you count backwards from the 1st of October, including the 1st of October, you end up at the 17th of September, which also might explain why he was having difficulty with those contrary winds. That's quite late in the year, possibly, to be setting sail to get across to where you need to get across to. That's something else to consider. And now here in the last section of the set text, this is the end of his letter, he now tells his emperor the kind of jobs that he's doing. He's getting on with things. He does that very clearly by emphasizing the present tense here, executio. I'm shaking out, literally, but I'm doing it now. So it's the present tense, once again, which makes it very vivid. It suggests that he's being businesslike. He's getting on with the task in hand. What is he doing? He's investigating, executio. I'm shaking out, so I'm looking and shaking everything up. And he's doing this with regard to the expenses, the revenue, and the debtors among the people of the city of Prusa. So that's where he is in Bithynia, and that's what he's doing at the moment, sorting out the corruption. Notice we've got one of those things that the Romans really liked. We still like them today. Things counted in threes. 1, 2, 3. Ready, steady, go. Game, set, and match. These are called tricolons. And we've got one here, impendia reditus debitores, 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice there is no word for and between them at all, so they are literally just listed, A, B, C. We call that a syndeton, and that just means that it emphasizes the amount that he's doing. Again, he's emphasizing how much he's getting on with things. I think it's worth mentioning this phrase, ex ipso tractatu. By doing this, by this very process, I'm realizing, intellego, there's the present tense again, more and more how important this is. So again, he's come into a place that needs to be sorted out, and he's the man to do it. He's the man for the job, and this emphasizes how good a job he is doing. And as if to emphasize that, he explains that a lot of money is being paid out for things, for costs that are clearly illegal in some forms. And there at the end of the letter, once again referring to Domine, my master, I'm writing this to you right at the beginning of my governorship. And I think again we can say that this emphasizes what a good serious job he's doing, and probably just reminding Trajan that he's made the right decision in getting Pliny to do this job. Good. I hope that explains the set text a little bit more clearly for you. I hope that puts it all into context, and that you can now feel much more confident in writing about how the Latin, don't forget the exam really likes you to look at how the Latin helps to emphasize the message that's being put across. Thank you. If you enjoyed that, please subscribe, thank you, and look forward to seeing you in one of my other lockdown learning sessions. Thank you very much. Goodbye.